not too bad. It's been a while since we had a chat.
Yeah, thanks
Well,
for your time. Are you good?
yeah, not too bad.
Good,
Last
good.
time I saw you was at Nat Col and the Kings, Charles Hotel, Perth,
Oh, wow.
2013 was it? I can't remember.
Yeah,
Wow,
that was my last year with them. So yeah, I think that was like 2013. Yeah.
yeah, great show,
Yeah.
and yeah, had a bit of a chat to that. But I've just been listening to the new album over the last few days. It's a bit different, but
Yeah.
it's amazing. I really, really, really enjoyed listening to it. So.
Oh, thanks, mate. Yeah, it's definitely a quite a contrast, especially from Nat Col and the Kings for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of like it's laid back and it sounds very natural and very comfortable to me. It sounds like
Mm.
it's coming from a place of security and sort of if you feel totally comfortable with what you've done. Is that
Yeah.
is that right?
Yeah, that's pretty spot on because I'd say that the sentiment of the songs is not really any sort of cohesive links between like the actual lyrical sentiments, but there's definitely an overall like in terms of the execution. It was created at a time where it was about me just being centered within myself, connected to my own sort of intuition, and also kind of just backing myself a little bit more. The
Mm.
previous album, Demons, was a bit more introspective and still self discovery, but a lot of uncertainty. So I felt like the that's why it's probably a little bit even more restrained than what this one is. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
pretty
mean,
spot
it
on.
sounds great. I mean, there's a few sort of like themes that seem to recur in there. Things like travel. There's like a sense of movement and sort of a journey, let's say, uh, and also life and death is in there as well. It's like a
Yeah,
very sort of spiritual sort of journey, if you
yeah,
like.
yeah. There's definitely yes a lot of sort of spirituality throughout it because it all comes from a really deep place. I mean, some songs are probably a little bit more tongue in cheek and they're your sort of bangers like comfort zones and stuff like that. But yeah, I went definitely went to some pretty deep places for some of these songs for sure. Yeah.
You sort of re-emerged slowly, I guess, over the last few years, starting off with the singles in like 2018, 2019, till
Mm,
you get to this stage where you're ready for the album.
mm.
It's what's changed? Was that always the plan, or were you just sort of
Um,
testing?
well, I was when I released the last album, Demons, that I suppose in a funny sort of way, it was me dipping my toe back in the water because I'd just come off the other side of a huge dark period in my life where I didn't even know whether I liked playing music anymore. And there was just too much fear. There was like fear in everything in my life. So it made it almost impossible to work out what I actually enjoy because fear was just corrupting everything. So but one of the many things I learned during that period is that you may feel like you don't enjoy something, but as long as there's fear there, it's impossible to trust, whether you're having that experience accurately or not. And each time I would live out an experience and challenge fear and get to the other side, that's when I'd really see, oh, this is something I love, or I don't like it, or and I didn't want to make a mistake with music by turning my back on it because of fear. So um dipping my toe in the water, going, all right, well, I'm just going to put out a song and then I'm going to do the odd gig. And each time I was challenging fear. And then I get to the other side and go, no, I do like gigging. Actually, I do like releasing music. And just the momentum just started to build until it got to a point where I was like, all right, I'm ready to put out an album and then I'm going to put out another album and then we're going to tour the country. So I've got a massive fire in the belly. And I think when you listen to the last album and you listen to this album, you, it would make sense, even just stylistically and production choices and everything, that there are those energies behind those albums. the first one being a little bit more sort of a bit tentative, and then this one being pretty rock solid. All right, we're going deep.
Yeah,
So
it's hard work though, isn't it? All the other things that are built around music, like the logistics of touring, the getting to the venues, the
yeah.
selling the tickets. It's all that kind. It's like any business, I guess. It's all the other stuff that takes away from the bit that you really
Well,
enjoy.
it's funny you should say that, because when Kenny Jewell, my yeah, he's been playing guitar with me for a long time now. That was one of the things he reminded me of when I was in that dark place. He said, "Just remember, it's not performing that you don't love. It's all the other shit that you've got to deal with that's messing all this up." And because there was a lot of that, there was a lot of, by the time I'm on stage, I'm exhausted because of all the other stuff that I've been dealing with. And, I now know where my limits are. I didn't know where my limits were, and I didn't respect them at all back then. Um, and so psychologically, I got pretty messed up with all that. But yeah, you're true. Yeah, very, very right there.
Well, let's have a look at the album then. I mean, I don't want to
Sure.
go over the past. Everyone knows who you are and what you've done, and like how wonderful the music is. But I actually, I'm prepared to stick my neck out and say this is the best thing you've done.
Oh, thanks, mate.
Now,
That's yeah,
I
awesome.
love Nat Cole and the Kings. I love the early stuff, but for me, there's sort of like a depth and a, a sort of I don't know what it is. I've been listening to it all week, thinking this sounds like the work of a guy who's had a whole career behind him. It's like it's like a I don't know. I don't know. It's there's everything in there. There's a wonderful sort of antique flavor to it as well. It's like it's not something that was meant to have been born in 2023. It feels like it's years old. I mean, even stuff like um, I was playing Comfort Zones earlier, like it was just
Yeah.
random chat, and to me, that's almost like a sort of funky, slowed down T Rex type
Yeah,
stomp.
yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, it's really difficult to not be influenced by some of the more retro music that I grew up listening to. I mean, I feel like I almost came back home with this album, in a sense that um it reconnected me with my first real love. Actually wasn't blues. It was, but it wasn't. I feel like my first introduction to music was actually Dire Straits. And when you listen to Dire Straits, as much as what Mark Knopfler is a guitar player, I mean, it's not a guitar geek album. Their albums are songs. They're all songs. He uses the guitar and all different instruments to create like songs that move people and make people feel a certain way. And I suppose I kept coming back to that. Is that I didn't want to just um create a guitar album. I wanted it to speak in lots of different ways, and I wanted it to say something that goes beyond what my fingers can say.
yeah.
And
I think that was sort of like what I was searching for because there's some wonderful like sax and brass and stuff on there as well that just like really fills out the sound. I mean, I think the first two songs on there are fantastic. They've been released as singles.
yeah,
Um, the sort of Spanish concept behind the first track
Carencia,
as well. Because
yeah,
I'm taking it's funny because I thought I knew what it meant, and it turned out I did, which was
yep,
good. But the
yep.
first result that came out was a retirement home in Maui.
Oh,
and
Carencia, really? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Right.
thought, no,
Funny.
I'm sure you're not singing about that one.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Bit
it,
early,
it
bit early.
it's cool though, and I guess that's what I was getting at when we sort of like opened up and said, it feels like you're in that comfortable spot. So there might be all this stuff might be still going on all around, but you feel like you've regained that sort of like that power, I guess. Um,
Yeah, well, that's been the goal for a while. Is I can either be at the mercy of the world around me, or I can find my own, confidence and truths and peace within myself. That's like an anchor, despite what's going on
Mm.
around. And that philosophy can be applied, in serious situations, or it also can be applied. I kept coming back to it throughout the creative process of the album, is that little things like, how can I how can I stay true to, my own desires in here, despite whether such and such says they hate them, or whether they think I should be extending the guitar solo because that's what they expect of me, or not singing so much, or whatever it is. I mean, there's a lot of there's always been a lot of noise in my head that has come from the past, that uh, always attempts to just hijack what I'm trying to do. And so I kept having to come back to this place within myself to pair any of that up, to go, all right, is this noise that I'm hearing, is it resonant? Like, is it true, or is it just bullshit? And a lot of the times it's just bullshit. It's just fear, bullshit, perfectionism. And another way that I was able to kind of work through that was just um, was having just a select sort of group of ears around me that I trusted, that
Mm.
would tell it how it is. I didn't want to be surrounded by yes people, but also knew, like, had a good idea of what I was trying to achieve. And one of those sets of ears was Andrew Sheps.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mix engineer. He's done everything from Lana Del Rey to Chili Peppers to Michael Jackson, and so he was a fantastic anchor throughout the process, to make sure that I didn't drift, or to make sure that I was courageously heading down the path that I was supposed to head down.
Mm.
Yeah,
I mean, to me, it's an album that's an album. It's not a collection of singles. Like when I've played it, I've not really skipped anything. I was skipping a bit today, but
mm.
I'll play it all the way through. I think one of my favorites on there that I'd love to ask you about is "Not With You."
Oh,
It's
cool. Yeah, yeah,
probably at the moment my favorite song in there. It's sort
yeah,
of like it's like wonderfully peaceful, but there's also that sort of like bittersweetness about it
yeah.
that
Mm.
you think there's like a longing, and the guitar
Yes.
like underlines that.
Well, yeah, well said. That's exactly what I'm going through. I mean, this is exciting to hear your thoughts, because I play music as a means of self-expression, but I release it hoping that it translates. And so when you're saying back to me exactly what I intended, like, to create, is really cool. It means I'm doing something right.
Oh,
But
good.
not with you. Yeah, I mean, I've never written a song like that before. It's kind of almost a bit inspired by some of those early doo-wops, um, and but being sort of twisted around a little bit. And that song, it's funny because some of the songs on the album uh, can get a bit cryptic, where the the sentiment can be interpreted in lots of different ways. Not With You is straight to the point. There's nothing cryptic about it. It's and it's obviously about disconnection within your relationship, and experiencing all these amazing things, but not with the partner, not with the one that you love. You're experiencing it with everybody else. And the first time my wife heard that was actually at a gig, and I forgot to warn her about it. And obviously, like, some songs are about experiences that I've had. Others are inspired by experiences that I might have, that I then exaggerate to create art. And that's this one here, where we did go through a bit of a phase where we were feeling disconnected. And then I kind of just, stumbled upon this concept when I went, what if this was like really extreme? What would the story be? And that's what, Not With You is about. So she said to me that when I played that song live, because I also had mentioned earlier on that my wife's here in the crowd, and it's good to have her here. She said it felt like all eyes were just on her. And
I can
she's like, "You
imagine.
bastard, you could have warned me. Now everyone's gonna think we've got relationship problems." And very
I
funny.
mean, it's a very interesting song, though, in the fact that, like, I mean, it shows that life's magical. There's all these great things out there, but it
Yeah,
means so much more if you're with the ones you love.
absolutely.
Another one I really like. I mean, My Boys is great. It's just like a lullaby to me.
Mm.
That's wonderfully sentimental in all the right ways. But Go Quietly, I loved as well, which is sort of again another one of those really subtle songs,
Mm.
almost sort of like dreamlike in a way.
Yeah.
What about
Go
that one?
quietly. I'm glad you enjoy that one. Yeah, it's a pretty deep song. That is definitely written from my own personal experiences of when I was at my worst mentally, and I was so sensitive to the happiness of others, and almost at times, you know, when it came to my group of friends, almost resented them from it because I felt like um they were just going on without me, And yeah, there's definitely some deep and dark um expressions in that song, and I wanted it to have some sort of psychedelic, euphoric, but in a dark way, flavors in there, and a lot of space to breathe. I was quite influenced by Lana Del Rey on that one,
Yeah.
actually. Mm.
And the one that I'm not a big fan of instrumental music, I must admit, but the
Mm.
closing song has changed my mind. When the party's over, I love that wonderful build, and then
Yeah,
almost to crescendo, and then we go back. It's sort of like very circular. It's like a
yeah.
gem. It's like
Well,
turning itself.
that's actually a version of a Billie Eilish song.
Oh, okay, I
Yeah,
never know.
and yeah, but obviously she sings it, and I I grew up listening to instrumentals of like Roy Buchanan and the sometimes the Shadows and some of those sort of psychedelic surf instrumentals, and I feel like it's a hat tip for me, is to create an album, but then also to just put an instrumental that tips the hat to those type of instrumentals that I grew up listening to. But I've it's never really been in me to um it's the same with the rest of the songs. I don't want anybody to listen to it and it just appeal to the guitar nuts.
Yeah,
Like it's still got to feel like a song and a journey. So um yeah.
that's great. I loved it. It's one I'll be listening to for a long time. And what's next then? You're going to come out and see us all? Is
Yeah,
that
well
happening?
the tour, this will be the biggest tour I've done since I was a kid. So we've already done Western Australia, so that was at the start of the year in March, and we had an incredible time touring. We spent 3 weeks up and down the Western Australia coast, all the way down to Esperance, and then all the way up to Broome, and it was just absolutely magical. I feel like we're taking a lot of that that fire from that tour. I'm going to bring it over here as well. So we're doing the rest of the country from about July onwards, and yeah, so it's just about touring. I mean, I already am itching and getting like ideas are popping into my head for another album. And but yeah, I just kind of put them in a bit of a creative notebook, and I'll revisit them when it comes time for me to head back into the studio. But yeah, for now, it's about touring and celebrating this album and giving these songs as much trajectory as what they deserve.
Was the writing process any different this time, or do you always write in the same way?
Um, I generally write the same way, but it has changed over the years in a sense that I used to I used to hit the studio a lot earlier than what I do now. And until I worked out that production can be an incredible distraction. Like, when I can definitely get restless and impatient and then end up finishing a song before I've consolidated the fundamentals and wonder why the song is just not, flying for me. It's because I missed out on all the things that were important because I got distracted by the production of it. So now I try my best to hold back and make sure that I've got the structure, the um, the sentiment, the lyrics, the progression, all of that is done. It's done on just a guitar, just the guitar and my voice, or a piano in my voice, and then that's it. And once that's done, then I'll build it up. And it's an exciting moment because I feel like I restrain myself as well. So when it's like a kid playing, it's like, all right, you've done your work, now you can play. And then I just let the ideas just fly. And most
So,
of what you're hearing, most of what you're hearing on this album has actually come from a demo.
oh wow, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
because I
So it is all about the preparation, though, isn't it? I mean, I know a lot of guys have told me that they get so caught up in making it sound right that it loses the edge and loses that
oh
flair.
yeah, and
And
I struggled with that on the previous album, and it was there was I just tortured myself, and it was something that I it's an intention that I set when I created this album, is that I want to embrace imperfection. That number one is everything that I play, everything that I sing, whatever I do, it has to come from a feeling. It can't be thought out. And I'd even do little things like put up a picture. Like I've never done this before, but I'm going to put up a picture on my big screen here and look at it until I feel something that aligns with the song. And once I've got that feeling, then I sing or then I play. And even I'm playing and I'm looking up at that picture, and it could be anything. So, like, say, for example, Broken Lines was about reminding myself of all the good that happens when you're on the road, when you're doing those big long road trips, and the song's about a guy who works through his troubles out on his bike. So I just, because it's retro in nature, I just put up a couple of photos of Easy Rider, the movie,
oh wow,
and
okay,
where they're out in the desert on
yeah,
their bikes, and then something like Gone to God would be a beautiful picture of birds in the air, flying amongst clouds, and yeah, so that was a really important part of the process, is just keep coming back to the feeling and then deal with those little details later after the performance has been captured.
yeah. It certainly worked. It's one of my albums of the year so far. I can't see
Thank you, I
too
appreciate that.
many too many getting ahead of that. So I've just got a couple of things. We've got a radio show now, so we'd love to play. I think we can play the singles on that. So we'll play the first two.
Sure,
If you wouldn't mind doing a quick intro for us, that would be
sure,
great.
no worries.
Just mention the Rock Pit.
The Rockpit. All right. Um, hey, I'm Nathan Cavalieri, and you're listening to Broken Lines on the Rockpit.
Cool. And we can play the one that everyone's going to find really hard to pronounce and spell, and they're going
Carencia.
to for
Yeah, yeah,
it.
yeah. No worries. Okay. Hey, I'm Nathan Cavalieri, and you're listening to Carencia on the Rockpit.
Wonderful. It's been great to speak to you. There's also a little bit that will sort of tie into those intros as well on the radio. Just a couple
Yep,
of questions that we asked to direct everyone towards
sure.
the album and also the interview.
Mhm.
If you could have been a fly on the wall for the creation of any great album, any point in the history of time, what would you love to have seen being made? You know,
Uh,
just
if I was if I was a fly on the wall, for one of my favorite albums would have to be Dire Straits, self-titled,
wow,
100%.
yeah,
Yeah, everything from how they captured those sounds that are uniquely Dire Straits, just to the general chemistry and the banter amongst the band members. I mean, that ended up being the soundtrack of so many amazing experiences in my life. So I would have loved to have seen that being captured.
yeah, they're great. Of course, you played with Mark, which must have been amazing.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah, absolutely.
but
Yeah.
yeah, and we'll leave you with an easy one. What is the meaning of life?
Oh, what is the meaning of life? Oh, I don't have a meaning for life. I think for me, the meaning of life is, to me right now, I'm just utilizing whatever is in my experience to learn, to walk a path that's truthful, that ultimately serves me, but no, sorry, that not only serves me but serves others as well. So that's that's where
Mm,
I'm. That's what 2023 Nathan thinks anyway.
that's a wonderful way to leave it.